all stand with us, we will have the pledge led by our student member, Mr. Brody Zaid.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Item number 1, adoption of the agenda. Any changes?
Yes, we would like to move item 9.4 to just after item 4.1 to keep the continuity and to accommodate the schedules of some of our guest presenters.
Okay. Then we will move to item 2, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. And we moved into programs and presentations. Presentation regarding the proposed trustee area plans.
Thank you. We have Mr. Doug Yoakum, our demographer, who is on WebEx and who will be presenting the trustee area plan draft maps. And he is available to answer questions after his presentation. Mr. Yoakum.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I see heads shaking. Let's see.
Mr. Morrison, he'll be sharing his screen. Mr. Yoakum, if you need help, let us know.
Yeah, I don't seem to be getting my, let's see, I've got this. Can you see anything?
Not yet.
I've never used WebEx before, so. I'm getting a thing that says connecting.
Okay, that looks promising. Mr. Morrison, can you show the screen larger? It's behind us. Okay, so I guess we'll need to look at the screen behind us.
You can see it now?
I see. What we have pulled it up on our screen, so Mr. Morrison can advance the slides if you just let us know when you're moving forward or backward.
All right, very well. My apologies. I'm a Zoom person. I've never used this WebEx before. My name is Doug Yoakum. I'm with National Demographics Corporation. We've been brought on to help you through the process of drawing districts. I believe you've had 2 meetings already and had explained the reason for going through this process. I will, if you'll go to my second page, it should be a timeline.
Yes, we see that.
Yeah. You made the decision October 24th to go to districts. You had your first public hearing on the 30th of October, and then your second public hearing on the 1st of November. And your attorney should have told you during those meetings what the rules are that we're following to do this, but I will try to go through them briefly again right now. So this is the first public hearing to actually consider draft maps. Tomorrow we'll have a second hearing to consider those maps again and to figure out the sequence of which districts go with which election years. We call that sequencing. And then your final public hearing is December 4th, where you will adopt a final map. That means that at tomorrow's hearing, we need to make substantial progress towards deciding upon a final map. If you'll go to my next slide.
Okay.
Basically, when you draw districts, you have to draw them with equal population for each district. In your school district, to divide, you take the population, you divide it into five districts, you get approximately, I think it's about 10 or 11,000 people per district. We have posted these draft maps that I'm about to show you on your website. And each one of those maps has a information sheet attached to it that has the population detail as to how many people are in each district and what the total deviation for those districts are. We have to keep the populations relatively equal, as I said, and follow the Federal Voting Rights Act while we are doing this exercise. To the extent possible, we keep communities together. We keep the districts compact, and they must be contiguous. In other words, they have to be connected to each other. Within each district has to be connected within itself. It can't be one part of your district in another part of your district. And we follow natural or visible man-made boundaries, large streets, railroad tracks, or rivers or streams, things that people can recognize easily when they look at your map. And we are going to respect the continuity of office, meaning that the voters put you there for a term of office, and we don't go out of our way to try to put one trustee in the same district as another one, so that all trustees have the ability to run for a district should they choose to. And to the extent possible, you can plan for future growth, although you have to be very careful there because that requires putting more people in one district and less people in another district that has some what you might think is future growth in it, and then that might cause an imbalance in populations, and you have to go back to the original question and say, is that equal population, and does it meet the deviation standards? All the draft maps that we've posted meet the population standards. If we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
The first exercise we go through is what would a good government map of this area look like? In other words, what is the most common sense drawing of districts within Sierra Sands Unified School District? And of course, that is in the eye of the beholder, because you can start anywhere and start drawing districts in one corner or another and end up with a completely different plan than you did by starting in another corner. This was my first exercise to do this, and you see three rather large rural districts, all of which touch the Ridgecrest area because they have to, because there's not enough people out in your rural regions to make enough for a district. And then it has two compact districts in the city of Ridgecrest. Let me show you the detail on the next slide of the Ridgecrest area.
Okay.
So you'll see District 2, which goes to your northwest corner. It has the entire city of community of Inyo Kern within it. And then it has two very small compact districts in the city of Ridgecrest. The pink district, named District 1 on the right, goes all the way out to your San Bernardino County portion. And then District 5 goes to your southwest corner of your district. If we can go back to map 100, the previous slide.
Okay.
On the bottom left, you'll see each proposed sequence of elections. And this also shows which trustee resides within each one of these districts. And in this particular plan, you'll see that District 3 contains the residents of Mr. Is it a Mr. R. Campbell?
Yes, that's Robert
And
Campbell.
and
Let,
and
let me pause you for a moment. It appears that the version of the presentation that we're showing on our screen is not the current version that you're referring to. Wondering
Oh.
if Mr. Morrison, it doesn't have the bottom left corner items that we had you add. So
Yes.
Mr. Morrison, if you're able to pull up the new version, it's also attached to the live agenda in case you need it. We will work to get that up because that is a helpful piece of information for us to see.
Absolutely. I'll wait a few seconds here.
Those of us who are on our computers, you may also see it there because it is attached to the agenda. Just one moment, we're almost there.
Okay.
Okay, I believe we are there at slide 4, map 100.
Okay, it's a 100. You'll see the proposed election sequence there. Two areas are proposed for in the 2024 election.
Can we
That's
scroll
area
down
1
a
and
little bit?
5.
Donnie, is there a way to show the full slide? Because we're not seeing the bottom. There we go. That'll work. Oh.
There you go. And there's 3 areas that would have 2026 elections, area 2, 3, and 4. Area 3 has Mr. R. Campbell and Mr. Rockwell within the district and within one trustee area. And trustee area 4, also that concentrated area at Ridgecrest would be vacant. If you go to draft map 101, page 6.
There we go.
There you go.
And
This
slide
takes
6, there we
the concept and turns it around a little bit. Instead of having 3 districts go out to the hinterlands, we have in this case 2 districts going out to the rural areas. The area, the community of Inyokern is located again within one district, but this time it's District 5. And then you have 3 very compact districts located there in Ridgecrest. If you'll go to slide 7, you'll see a detail map of the Ridgecrest area there. 3 very compact districts right in the center there. And if you go back to page 6, you'll see in the proposed election sequence that each trustee area has one trustee within it. So now we'll go to draft map 102.
Okay.
Page 8. This is similar to the first iteration, 100. It has 3 relatively rural districts, but again, everything has to come into Ridgecrest because that's where the people are. In this particular draft, I'll go to the page 9 now. There are 2 centrally located districts. They look very similar to districts 2 and 3 in draft 101 as in draft 102. It's the rural areas that get treated differently in this draft. Am I still in here? Can be heard?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, my computer has frozen here. All right. I'm back in functioning here. Let's go to 103, page 10. This is the fourth draft map that we've put together for you. It has your San Bernardino County portions located within one district. That is trustee area 4. It has a similar kind of look in the central area between 103 and 102, where you have 2 centrally located districts, and the other 3 go out to the rural areas. 1 to the west, one to the south and the east, containing all of your San Bernardino County portion. And District 1 in this drawing is a little more compact and doesn't go all the way out to the San Bernardino area. So each one of these maps is different. If you'll go to page 11, this shows the detail in Ridgecrest of draft 103, where you have those 2 central Ridgecrest kind of districts. Area 3 will have all of Inyo Kern within it. And then everything basically rotates out of the town, the city of Ridgecrest, where all your population is. Those are the 4 draft maps that we have created for you. At this point, I suggest if the trustees have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Then I suggest you go into your public hearing and hear if any members of the public are interested in what these maps look like, or have suggestions about what they should look like. Then we'll take. Then you'll have a deliberation as to what maps you like, and you can direct me as to what you would like me to do. Either change the maps, get rid of one of the maps, or think that you like a particular map and like to focus on that. And again, you can suggest changes or whatever. This is a process that's in your hands. You have the responsibility of picking a map and then doing 2 more meetings in order to adopt that map. But at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions from board members on the maps?
Yeah,
Robert?
You gotta speak into your microphone. Map 102, does that have all the trustees in separate areas, or are there trustees in the same section?
Yes, map 100 is the only one that has 2 trustees located within one trustee area.
Slide 8.
The other
please.
3 the trustees are all located in a separate district.
Thank you.
Slide 8.
Any other questions from board members?
Okay,
Mary?
I have a question. So you explained how you're gonna do this. Equal amount of people, each 5 sections will have equal amount, and then you showed variations of that. You showed how. My question is, why are we dividing Ridgecrest?
Because Ridgecrest itself is too large for one district.
Okay, and He also mentioned that that Ridgecrest wasn't big enough, and that's why you have to expand way out into the rural areas.
Well, we draw districts to include all areas of your school district. So all those rural areas have to be within one district. But if
Okay.
you draw them, if you draw like, I'm looking at 102 right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you start in Cyril's Valley and go north of Ridgecrest and take that area and stop at the railroad tracks, you still need a lot of people. And you're not going to get them by going to the west. You need to get them from the city of Ridgecrest where they actually are.
Okay, I understand that, what you're saying there, but the overall reasoning of dividing, because what Ridgecrest citizens need to understand, that if they have someone in 5, say, and they're running, that you are not able to vote in 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can only vote in your section. So that,
Right. That's
correct? Is that what I'm?
right.
Yeah.
You've decided to go to a system that runs by district rather than at large. I'm presuming that you have been at large for a long time now, and that's the way you've always done it. So
Correct.
people will have to get used to voting for just someone from from one district.
Okay, so a follow-up question on that, since it's been happening already for years, what are some of the positive outcomes of this? Have you seen schools improve? Is this a positive, I mean, there has to be some studies on how this is working by constricting voting rights, if you will.
Well, everybody still has the right to vote. Everybody will still vote on one member of the board, and that member will be their representative that they have elected.
Okay, so, so
It's
maybe
just a difference of having to vote on all 5 or 2 or 3 in each election instead of just one.
okay.
I don't have a lot of I don't have any knowledge of studies that have been done whether this is a better way of doing it in order to improve outcomes in schools.
Okay.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. The legislature enacted the Voting Rights Act in order to have more people from disadvantaged communities to be elected to local boards. That's the purpose of the Voting Rights Act. And it has an element within it that incentivizes districts like yours and special districts that are even smaller than yours to go to district elections rather than at-large elections. I hope that your attorney had explained this to you.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Mary, one of the things important to understand is this presentation is being given to us because we selected to go to district representation. So his job and his responsibility is just to create the maps, not explain to us why we went to the maps. If there are questions you want studies covered, our attorney is on the line, and Dr. Moore can identify some of the studies about what specifically some of the motivations are for going to a area representation rather than at large. Is that what you'd like to
Yeah, I mean,
hear?
I just want our Ridgecrest to understand what the reasoning is and like why we're doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, yeah.
Yeah, and I think,
We don't really have a choice, because what I'm understanding is that if we even try to fight it or want to stay at large, that it's not going to happen anyways.
yeah, I think that's, in our previous discussions, you'll recall, we talked about some of the downsides and upsides of going to this model. And I think, in general, I think the board would have opted not to if we felt it was reasonable and the risk was reasonable, but because the risk is unreasonable, we should not put the district through that. And so there are, in some districts, in some areas, the motivation is specifically motivated by seeing that minorities get appropriate representation in elections. That does not play out in our community because we're a pretty homogeneous area. But that doesn't stop those who wish to pursue these from coming after us to see that we comply. Does that make sense? Not do you
Yeah,
approve, but
yeah.
does that make sense why we came to this conclusion?
Just one thing I just want people to be aware of is that if you're, whatever section you're not in, you will not be voting in that area at all. So just keep that in mind because your voting right, voting rights, your voting is being restricted. And that's how I look at it. And we're a community. And so there's going to be times where 3 of us got elected and the next time there's going to be 2. So then there's going to be a time where sections will not be voting.
So each right, and each person will only be voting for their specific representative.
Correct, yes,
On the rotation that it comes up.
yes.
So, and they would be voting for a 4-year membership. And Kurt, you had,
Yes,
Yeah, so not everybody that's in here in the room or on YouTube has probably been involved in the discussions that we've had to date. This is kind of our, I think, our third get-together on the topic. Actually, with the hearings, it's been more than that, but third kind of deep discussion on the topic. And as Mr. Ferris said, we, left to our own devices, this is not something we want to do. But if we don't, there are ambulance chaser attorneys that will bring suit against us and sue us for not doing this. And so far in the state of California, exactly 0 districts have won those cases. So if anybody in the, that has a diploma on the wall and is signed up to the California bar, wants to come make, $30,000 or $40,000 easy and sue us where we'll have to pay out potentially millions of dollars if we lose. And so far, like I said, everybody loses. Then
yes,
that's the scenario that we are living in and trying to avoid. So we are begrudgingly going down this path so that we protect the district from unnecessary fiscal risk. And I believe that this is not as good for our community, for our schools to do it this way. But there's a gun to our head, basically, that's causing us to go down this path. And it's unfortunate. It's actually extremely maddening. But it's where we are, and it's, unless something changes, it's what we're doing.
right.
And I'd sure love to find a way to fight it, but we're not gonna be able to fight it in time to protect us from
Exactly.
nefarious characters out there trying to make a buck, so.
Well,
thank you, Robert.
No.
what's
thanks.
unfortunate, I think, is one, this is the way our country's going, where we're getting tied to certain things that make us do certain things that we don't want to do. And they have ways of making it so if you do it, you lose money in your district, and your kids suffer in your school districts because you're paying money for something that you don't want to do. And second of all, we don't have the option of picking which one we want if we go the other way. But I think the most frustrating thing to me is, of this whole thing, is people that want to run for school board. If your area is not up, you can't run until your area that you live in is up for adoption for your trustee. And that to me is frustrating, because I think every citizen should get to run for school board whenever the elections are. And that's a frustrating thing for me. Because obviously, we want the best people to be on the school board, and we want the community of Ridgecrest to be able to pick who they want, not who they want in their area. And that to me is what's really frustrating about this. But once again, I think like Kurt said, it's frustrating that our hands are kind of tied. And it seems like that's happening more and more in our society when you look at school boards and what they're trying to fight for. So it's unfortunate.
So, and, yeah, just putting it out there. So let's say District 5 is open or not open. Those are the only people that can run in that section. So I just want to make that clear for people. And this is a tough, really tough decision right now because I just feel like voting, get out and vote. How many times have we heard that? Get out and vote, get out and vote. So next session that we vote for school board, only 2 sections will be, well, when it runs through the cycle, 2 and then 3 and then 2 and then 3. And part of the town won't be voting. They won't even have it on their ballot. So it's just something to think about.
Well, and the other thing.
Yeah, I do think that Mary had one great question that I suspect there aren't studies out there, or if they are, I certainly haven't seen them. But when you change from an at-large district to a trustee area district, do kids do we see better results in our schools? I'd love to see a study that gave us that information, because I'm pretty sure it's probably there's probably no correlation between trustee areas or at-large areas and student achievement, which is, kind of frustrating.
Right, but they're just taking off our votes.
And I don't see, I don't know, to me, I don't need a study. It's real simple. If you got an area and no one wants to run in that area, what are you going to do? You got to go find someone.
And we talked about that. And Mike has a question. I'd like to recommend that.
No, sorry.
I know we're expressing a lot of frustration here, and I get it, and I know it's important that people understand. But this particular presentation right now is really just on the maps,
Okay.
not whether we're going to do it or why we chose to do it. I think we all feel a little frustrated. We want to make sure the public understands. But a poor demographer, it's not his fault. So, and Mike had a question, so let's identify Mike. I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't.
Not a problem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Yocum, so with about 35,000 residents, we're trying to split this up evenly, and it looks like draft 101, we're down to a deviation from ideal of 128
Yes.
people, and draft 101 is 131. To me, that's about as even as it gets. Is that the norm? Do you normally get it that close?
No, sometimes I have to go, up to 4 and 5%, but in these particular instances, the Census Bureau helped out by drawing a lot of what we call census blocks. So adding and subtracting census blocks together made it easy to come up with districts that are not only compact and using streets that are recognizable, but also includes enough people that I can come up with a plus very close to the zero deviation, which is ideal. But you do not have to have zero deviation. The only people that have to have zero deviation in their districts are congressmen. So you have the option of not. You don't have to pick the most equal population plan that I've drawn for you. You can pick any one of them, because they're all compliant. They're all within the 10% total deviation standard that most courts use when dealing with local government entities.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rockwell says he has a relevant question.
Instead of the irrelevant stuff I've said to date. So I'm curious, so you've drawn up these 4 maps for us. How do we pick the right one? I'm kind of thoroughly confused as to, yeah.
Well, you can do 3 things. You can put them all up on a wall and shoot darts at them, and say, and whichever one the dart lands on, you can pick that one.
Sounds complicated.
Or you can look at them and say, this one looks this aesthetically better than the other one. Or you can say, I think this treats this community well. Inyo Kern is better situated in this map than another map. There are all sorts of ways you can look at it. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that, as I look through the data associated with all of these maps, it's, there's a lot of demographic data that you provided in addition to what we've seen here tonight. And it's great. I mean, we see ethnicities, we see ages, we see, other demographics, voting history, all of those things. But
does it
once,
look good?
once that's, once I look through all that, I can't tell you that I would say, yeah, that's a better one than that one because of all that data. It is going to be throwing a dart at the wall and seeing what it is. It's not going to be that, but yeah.
Robert?
What do we do if down the line we get a huge amount of growth and there's a certain section that has a big, huge housing project start and it changes things? Do we have to change the demographics, or how does that work?
No, you do not have to change that immediately, but you all get to go through this again in 2031 after the next census.
Not all.
That's when the state requires all districted districts, like cities, counties, community college districts, school districts, and special districts that are elected by district are required to redraw their districts after each census.
Okay, any other questions of the demographer? All right, then we will move into the public hearing on this issue, and that way it gives the folks in the public an opportunity to ask questions. So the information is the same. I don't know that we need to explain any more. If you have a question or comment on the maps themselves, please come to the podium and share your name.
Good evening. I'm Eric. Just a question about the maps themselves, without going into too much of the details. In the top right-hand corner, north of Ridgecrest, and then east of, I would say, Lee Lighter Road itself, all of that is vacant. There are no houses in that area. Is that taken into consideration? Because it is on the map listed within Kern County, but obviously there are no houses out there.
So there are no residents, but the map has to include the entire school district. And technically, we never know what the future will be, right? So
Okay.
we know pretty well in some of those areas there will never be housing, but
Okay, no, that
Yeah.
was it. And then the second thing, I know it doesn't really pertain to the maps, but for the census of the board members, is it possible or within the rights of the board or the community to say, hey, let's finish everybody off at the same time so all communities and all zones can vote at the same time?
you cannot cut short the memberships that have already
Right.
been elected.
Right.
So there wouldn't be a way to do that without either extending people's representation or curtailing people's representation. Do you understand that?
Right.
So my term ends next year. Kurt's term ends 3 years from now. So we couldn't get them all at the same time unless you either extended mine or cut his short. And so that's not an option.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, then we will move to 9.4.
Wait a minute. You don't want to have a discussion about the maps?
Yeah, 9.4 is the discussions regarding the
Oh, okay.
content, yes. That was
Very
just
good.
the public hearing that we went through. So we are now going to 9.4 to discuss the maps. And I do have a comment that I would like to make in discussion of the maps themselves. I believe,
Could you tell me which member is speaking?
this is Bill Ferris.
Aha.
So in our discussion of the concern to going by area representation, we discussed the fact that in communities our size, there have been other communities who have experienced and mentioned concern about having an adequate number of people willing to serve. And I think that's a real concern. And for that reason, I think we ought to not make that problem an immediate problem by creating a vacant area to start with. To me, that makes no sense. And I'm like Kurt, as I went through the data and I went through the geographic borders, I find it really difficult to land on something that says, oh, this makes sense, this is better than that one. But I don't find it difficult to say it doesn't make sense for us to create a vacant area to start with when we have that unknown of whether we have somebody willing and able to serve. So my tendency is, as we move forward, to suggest we drop map 100 from consideration to narrow down our options so that we know we at least have people who are interested in serving from the very beginning. My 2 cents. Any other people have questions or comments on the maps themselves?
President
Mike?
Ferris? Yeah, Mr. Yocum, Mike Scott. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. When I rated them off all the information, I actually put number 100 as my last choice for that specific reason. Even though it had the best, it was the closest on the deviation from ideal. The next map was only, I think, 3 people greater. So, I mean, it just amazed me how close, if you're slicing up the, I hate to call it, piece of the pie, but I mean, it just amazed me how equal they all were. But for that reason that you've already identified, I made that my last choice.
Any other questions or comments from board members on the maps themselves? Did everybody understand what we're looking at and what the information involved is? And any guidance on other reasons other maps might be stronger than others? Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, I kind of, as I'm looking at them, I'm thinking in terms of, people, I don't know if people are going to care really, but, knowing if I'm in zone 1 or trustee area 1 and my buddy across the street, is he in area 1 or whatever, it seems like the simplest breakout of the geography would be good. And, for me, I think looking at map 103, that looks a little complicated to me compared to 101 and 102. So for me, and it's a little bit, it's not a huge difference, but, as I kind of quickly look at them just geometrically, 103 looks a little more complicated, so I'd be inclined to maybe put that lower as well. And then between 101 and 102, they're pretty dang similar for me.
Thank you, Kurt. Anybody else have any questions or comments on the desirability of the specific maps or understanding what they refer to? Well, we didn't give you a whole lot to work with, but I think we at least narrowed the field a little. So our next, yes, Dr. Moore.
So just a reminder, with the tight timeline that we're working under, this is really the chance for the board to give direction if you would like a different map. So it sounds like we may be working with or narrowing down the existing maps, but this is kind of our last chance as a body, based on our current timeline, to give direction if we needed a different map. And the other thing to consider as you look at the recommendation is to consider the sequence of elections. So if we're looking at maps 101, 2, or 3, and you can see like slide 6 on the behind us shows the sequence of elections, it mirrors the existing individuals and the patterns, so that may be what's desired. But when we have the special meeting, there's two main decisions that are up for decision. One is which map, and then the second decision is which sequence of elections. So those are the two things to consider, and again, to give direction if we wanted variations or different ideas, this is intended for that.
So help me here then, how would you alter sequence of election if you had sitting board members in those areas already?
You probably wouldn't, but you
You
could.
would not.
No, but, so, I mean, you really couldn't, right? It's not an option. Am I wrong?
I've seen it where
Technically-
if you have two people in there that have different endings, you're picking and
Right,
then
right, but see, if we eliminate 100,
Which is the vacant.
then all of them have designated members
Right.
in them. So we would not be able to even choose a different sequencing. because
Mr.
you-
Pafford, would you like to comment on that? I don't think we would, but I think it is possible. Mr. Pafford's the phone number, is he able to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
we
hear
can,
you
thank
now.
you.
Okay, so if you change the sequencing of election, what it would do is nobody would be able to run out of that district. So like, look at map 101. If you went to area 5, so Mr. Ferris, up in 24. No, let me pick a different example. If you went to area 1 with Mr. Campbell, he's up in 26. But if you change that sequencing of election to 24, nobody in area 1 would be able to run. So you need to stick with the sequencing of elections that is described in the map, because in 24, no one would be able to run, and then you would have to
Have a special in
come
26.
26. Yeah, you'd have to have either a special election in 26 or make a provisional appointment in 26 for somebody in district number 1. So if you change the sequencing of elections, you're going to cause the district more work with either special elections or a provisional appointment.
And you'd only want to do that if you had a, compelling reason to do so, and I'm not sure what that would be.
You really don't like me, then.
Well, that's very compelling, yeah.
Well, yeah, so I think that, for me, that takes that off the table. If we eliminate map 100, there's no reason for us to change the sequencing. There's a natural automatic sequencing that works, and we wouldn't need to mess with it.
Well, I was
So I
under,
would, at the
Go ahead, Robert.
I was under the
time
understanding
when
that,
you,
oh, he's talking. Okay.
Go,
I'm sorry. So I was just
Go
going to say,
ahead.
at the time when you do make a motion to adopt the map on the 4th, your motion would be something along the lines of, we move to adopt, say, map 101 and the sequencing described, therefore on the maps, and you could go through, and in the resolution that I will provide you, we'll have blanks where you fill in the sequencing of elections, and you would put in the numbers as listed in map 101.
Thank you. So, does anyone think we need another map with any other considerations?
I guess my question was, before we decide if we need a map, I was under the understanding, and maybe I just don't understand what's going on the sequence thing. Our attorney, Mark, said that everybody's election, you're it till your election's over. So the
Correct.
sequencing thing sounds like to me that they could change that, and,
We could change the sequencing, we could not change the length of term.
right.
So what he was just describing there just now is if we change the sequencing, that means, for instance, if we change the sequencing of your area to 24, then in 2024, we would not have an election because you still hold the
Right.
seat. But means in 26, it would become vacant. And we would either have to do a provisional election
Oh, I
or
see. Okay.
a special election or a provisional appointment,
Which would be silly.
which again, to me, makes no sense, but
Okay, thank you.
there's a lot about this that makes no sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I guess one thought and one question. One thought is, as I look through the maps, for what it's worth, and I'm not sure it's worth anything, you know, if we really are narrowing it down to like between 101 and 102, for example, one of the nice things about 101 is, again, to the extent it matters, in each election cycle, you'd have a trustee from a relatively rural area and a trustee from more, in Ridgecrest's terms, an urban area at the same time, as opposed to only rural areas being represented in an election and only urban, for example. So, you know, 101 is the one that splits that up a little bit. So maybe that's a positive, I don't know. The other thing, and it really is, I think in all of our minds, a huge deal, is are we gonna have areas where we are gonna draw good candidates? Or are we gonna set up areas where we're not gonna get anybody who wants to run? And I wish there was something in the demographics that would sort of help us lead to that. You know, maybe one of the ones that we should focus on harder is, you know, the who votes numbers. I would suspect that in the areas where, you know, more people vote, those are people that are gonna be more politically interested, more politically active, and maybe that would be a proxy for being able to generate an understanding of interest in running for a seat. I don't know. So I don't know if there would be any value of creating a map that focuses in harder on, you know, active voting population or something like that. That's the only other area where I think maybe having another map might be of interest.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to point out that in the demographics, for the trustee that just talked about the voter turnout, you do have that information for the November 2020 and the November 2022 election for each trustee area. And I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking at map 101 and 102, you know, they are fairly balanced, especially like if you look in the 2020 election, it was each trustee area was pretty well balanced. 2022 gets a little bit off, but not by many percentage.
Thank you. And I will say for what I observed, and I tried to look through the data pretty effectively, but I also intended that once we got it narrowing down, I could look a little more specifically. I think sometimes it's kind of difficult to come to a conclusion about which direction something leans. Because truly, the intent of the Voter Rights Act was to encourage people who feel like they are disenfranchised now and may not be voting now, that they may have an opportunity to vote, or they may have an opportunity to win an election. One of the advantages that is touted by this kind of a concept is if you don't have a lot of money to run a campaign, and if all you're doing is representing a smaller area, you have fewer people to influence about the qualities you offer. And so while you may have been someone who was uninterested in running before, you may think, you know what, I can work this neighborhood. I can talk to my neighbors and let them know who I am, and therefore become a public servant in this way. So I think it's almost dangerous to try and decide which way that falls, because you may be defeating the same thing you're really trying to accomplish. So that is a supposed strong point of this concept. So I guess for me, I don't know that we need to create, my sense is I don't know we need to create any more maps. I think the gain in our community, because we are so homogeneous, is probably not as significant as it could be in some communities. But we need to do it. So I think I'd like to see us maybe as a group narrow down to 2 or 3, And then that way, our next meeting, we can really look hard at the numbers and see if there's something that's obvious to us. And if not, then we go to the dartboard as described. Does anybody else have any comments on that, those issues?
Bill, I don't think we
Mike?
need to create additional maps. I kind of ranked them in order. I think the top two I had were 101, 102. Obviously 100 for the reasons previously discussed, and 103. So like I said, the top two I had were 101, 102. So I think all of them for the most part were sliced up, had the same figures throughout. It
Yeah,
was
they're
just
very,
the-
very close, aren't they? So I've heard from two board members that 101 and 102 are the preferred maps they would like to look at. Does any other board members have a comment in that regard?
I don't see any reason why we would get rid of 103 yet. I mean, I understand 100, but I don't know if we want to
Okay.
slim it down.
Mary, you have any thoughts on that? Okay, well, I think that certainly doesn't create too big of a problem to have three, and if there's interest in keeping the third in, I would support that. I don't mind moving it to just two, but it looks like we have some interest in keeping the third in there. So it sounds like our message to our demographer is, don't go home and write a new map. I guess you already are home, aren't you? You don't need to write a new map, and we will focus in on 1, 2, and 3 at our.
Do we get a discount if we don't have him write any more math?
No, but I'm pretty sure the bill would get larger if we had him write bigger. Any other comments at this time?
You do want to get this done prior to the first of the year.
Yes. All right, if there are no other comments, we will now move back up to the top of the agenda. That's all you needed from us, correct? At this time?
Yes, you've narrowed it down a bit. We'll meet again tomorrow and hear from any members of the public who have any opinions that haven't been expressed. And then you can narrow it some more tomorrow, or you can leave it all up and then just on December 5th decide which one you want. Did I say that right? December 5th or 4th? I can't recall.
It is
Just
the 4th
decide
or-
which one you want.
Where's the public hearing?
Want to confirm that date since we're audibly, the 4th, December 4th.
It's the 4th.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Pleasure to meet with you.
That brings us to item 5, reports and communication. Brody, we'll have your student members report.
From Murray Middle School. This past month, we continue to focus on developing our culture and community programs at Murray Middle School with support today from our SSC representative, Mrs. Lisa Burchett, PTSO member Jenny Olson, and Parker Cravens. We are so thankful this month to have representation from our parents on our Student Site Council and PTSO with their presence today. As we commit to building a new culture and being dedicated to being involving our community and parents, we honor their participation. This past month, we have moved into recognizing Student of the Month from each teacher, a past tradition that we have reintroduced. Celebrating autumn with our Haunted Halloween dance on October 27th, coffee with the principal on October 18th, and approaching our staff to refine and reintroduce training for new staff on AVID education. Mrs. McKenzie recently attended a professional development conference on inclusion collaboration in San Jose to keep us informed and involved in how to best support our Murray students. Our student body is currently in the tradition of our annual canned food drive, and we celebrate the volleyball season ending with participation at Saratoga Community College on November 3rd, with placing third from 6th and 7th grade teams and 8th grade participation under the leadership of our new coach, Lindsay Kelves. As we look forward to our combined Monroe-Murray cross-country banquet on November 13th at Burroughs, we are thrilled to have students compete and strive to be a part of something very special that pushes them to work together with Monroe athletes representing the school district. We are now into signups and tryouts with our girls and boys basketball teams for the winter season under the leadership of Coach Jay, Coach Chadwick, and Coach Clampt. We are anticipating over 100 students trying out for teams at Murray. Some other great news is that we kicked off our fundraising events with the community at Ridgecrest Theater night on Balsam in February, and other activities with our expanded PTSO team of parent leaders. We will continue the holiday season with music concerts, an art show, a talent show, and having a series of student events with ASB and Rachel's Link. From Monroe Middle School, it's the season of giving thanks, and we are truly thankful at James Monroe for all of our dedicated teachers and staff who show up every day with a smile on their faces ready to tackle whatever gets thrown at them. We are thankful for our Tigers and Tiger families. We are so lucky to partner with so many amazing parents and guardians helping our Tigers be the best they can be. From coaching to PTSO and community involvement, Monroe parents can't be beat. On campus, we have been busy in the last month. First, we finished up a winning volleyball season for both grade levels. Basketball tryouts were last week, and coaches are excited to get to work. Our Red Ribbon Week finished with a fun lunchtime carnival where the students could play games, enjoy treats, and get their faces painted. Advisory is moving along with students moving in and out of intervention classes as they need support in specific areas or with particular concepts. What we see is our students rise to every occasion and give it their all. With just a few weeks left in the semester, the students are working hard to finish strong and show what they have learned. After the break, we will be tackling the second semester with renewed spirit and a true Tigers roar. From Mesquite. Mesquite has graduated 3 more students since the first quarter, which brings our total to 8 for the year. Since our last report, students visited Saracosa and Mojave for a career expo and participated in a financial preparedness workshop to help prepare them for post-graduation. The most recent presentation was by our local CNA program to inform students about potential healthcare careers. After Thanksgiving break, students will learn what it takes to be a paralegal. For Halloween, students had a great spirit week, which included wearing fall colors and flannel to PJs and costumes. They celebrated fall with their annual carnival. Students played games like cornhole, participated in a cakewalk, and even had an opportunity to fling whipped cream at Mr. Cosner. Thankfully, no one was injured, but much laughter ensued. Tomorrow, the school will celebrate Thanksgiving together with their feast, inviting students and families together to celebrate their hard work and efforts as we near the midpoint of the school year. On a more somber note, Mrs. Teresa Damier, thank you guys, did a special presentation in partnership with local officers to help keep students safe from child predators and learn the dangers of human trafficking in the modern world. Over the next few weeks, presentations from local CLPD and CTE fields will host a resume workshop. It is hard to believe this semester is almost over with only 3 weeks remaining. Students continue to make progress towards their graduation with an almost 200% increase in credit accrual rate and an almost 90% drop in suspension rate. Go Dragons, show them how to soar. And from Burroughs. The last month has been an exciting time for our boroughs. The week of October 23rd through the 27th was Red Ribbon Week, where students were actively encouraged to stay off of drugs. We also held a scary music concert where orchestra students from the middle schools joined the high school to learn and perform 4 musical pieces. On Halloween, our students dressed up in their best costumes. We also had a door decorating competition that was Halloween themed. We had our virtual mid-cycle WASP visit, and the visiting chairperson supported the growth areas for improvement. Drama held their fall play entitled Trap on October 27th and 28th and November 3rd through 4th. The performers did a great job and gave audiences a thrilling experience. In sports, both girls and boys cross-country teams are Mojave River League champions. This is the first time in Borough's history for both teams to be league champions in the same year. Renee Mathewson Martinez, Cadence Stewart, Isabella Lipinska Hunt, Ryan Morrison, Silas Aberer, and Tristan Sievers were selected as all league runners. Eve Washburn and Zion Ortiz are MRL runners of the year. Girls tennis and volleyball made their respective playoffs too. We closed out our football season with senior night, honoring the seniors in football, cheer, band, and color guard. The winter sports, which are boys and girls soccer, basketball, and wrestling, are now starting. Our teams have begun to practice and are looking forward to a competitive season. We had the first of 2 November Spirit Days last week, Stocks, Crocs, and Birkenstocks. Tomorrow we will have the second Spirit Day, Rhyme Without Reason, where students will pair up to dress as things that rhyme but don't match.
Thank you, Brody. That brings us to item 2, reports from members of the board. Board members have anything to report? Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, I can't believe that the CSBA Annual Education Conference is already coming. It's the week after next. Mr. Ferris and I are part of the Delegate Assembly. This is more a warning for Dr. Moore than it is a report of any sort. But the Delegate Assembly, one of the things that we do is we work on what it is that we want CSBA to work on. We do that through 4 different pillar committees. Mr. Ferris is on the Strengthen Local Governance Pillar Committee, and I'm on the Secure Fair Funding Pillar Committee. And the topic that the Delegate Assembly is going to be addressing through these various committees is on mental health this coming meeting. And so they've asked us, some questions that our homework is to go gather some information on these things. So just warning you, and you may want to warn some of the other folks sitting out here that maybe we might need some help collecting some information that we can then go and use and try to help the process going forward there. So otherwise, looking forward to a great conference. It's always extremely educational, very helpful in us being both better boardsmen, women, but also help us to understand the current state of education and what we can do to help. So looking forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Kurt, I appreciate you highlighting that ability for us to provide input. And I think it also, since we have this arena, I think it is important if members of the community are facing specific issues that the school district needs to understand better or address better on the areas of mental health. We would solicit that information, could be input directly to us for us to share as well. Besides that, which we've already reached out to within the district, we don't want to miss anything if we have an opportunity to relate information and challenges that we're facing. I would like to report that I did have the opportunity to see the Burroughs High School play. It was very entertaining, and it's always exciting to see what kind of skills, what I call life skills, are enhanced by giving kids the opportunity to make presentations in that way. There are just a lot of gains that young people can make in their personal presentations and their self-worth in those kind of opportunities. And it was an entertaining evening as well. I did also have the opportunity with Dr. Moore to visit, since our last meeting, Burroughs High School, Murray, and Richmond. And it's always exciting to see the amazing things that are happening in the classroom, the strategies, the programs that we are utilizing to meet kids' needs. And it's a good reality check to get a sense of what some of the challenges are too. We have a picture in our mind of what the typical classroom looks like, and sometimes that is not always a real picture. And it's good to be able to get out and see just exactly what kinds of specific challenges are in the classroom that our people are working so hard to meet the needs of kids with those many challenges. So I appreciate that opportunity. And with that, I will move it on to item 3, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, President Ferris. Month 2 enrollment is 5,088 students, up 9 from last time. this time last year. I'm happy to report that our attendance rate is also continuing to be higher than last year, with 94.3% of our students attending each day, up from 92.9% this time last year. And that's a team effort with our families, staff, and students to ensure that all of us are at school each day, ready to learn together. Since the last board meeting, we've launched our Facilities and Programs Advisory Committee. This is the committee that's helping us look at the configurations of our schools to know what to build as we look at the next school that we'll be applying for the grant from. And then we've also started our LCAP Advisory Committee to help us draft our new 3-year plan, led by Dr. Savko, and we appreciate her leadership on that. And we hosted our second Superintendent's Council. We hold the elections. Ms. Mary Campbell was with us, and I'm pleased to announce that our Vice President, adding to our leadership of that, is Mr. Eric Eager, and we heard from him earlier tonight. He's in attendance, so appreciate him stepping up into that leadership role. So these different committees and groups are helping us to lead forward with the best interests of our students and larger community, and making sure we're staying grounded and representing the various interests. I enjoyed visiting several of our schools' Lights On After School events, where our partners at High Desert Leaping Lizards helped students to showcase to their families the creative and fun learning experiences that they're having before and after school each day. And I also had the opportunity to stop by the borough's tennis banquet recently and witness the presentation of the inaugural Coach O'Neill Award. And the O'Neill family was in attendance, and it was a touching tribute to the impact of Coach O'Neill on the tennis team and the borough's family. I'm looking forward to tomorrow representing our district at Congressman McCarthy's East Sierra Aerospace and Technology meeting. It's a meeting of public groups, and I'll list that out in a moment, but this particular one is highlighting public schools on military installations. And so Sierra Sands, Muroc, and Central Union will be representing those types of districts. And attendance will include representatives from NOC-WD, Edwards Air Force Base, AFRL Rocket Lab, NASA Armstrong, NAS Lemoore, and the offices of Senators Grove and Wilk, and offices of Assemblyman Fong and Lackey, Cal State University Bakersfield, China Lake Alliance, and the Indian Wells Valley Economic Development Corporation. So lots of interested parties where we get to share how it works, how the partnership is working, and get more support. And then next week we'll be celebrating the season with our families and closing our schools for the Thanksgiving break. And I just wanted to pause and thank our cabinet and our principals, many of whom are in attendance tonight, for all of their leadership. It takes a lot of intentionality, long hours, and dedication to make a difference that they're doing every day. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. That brings us to item 4, the report to the Board of Education by the Desert Area Teachers Association.
Good evening, President Ferris, board members, Dr. Moore, community. I wasn't positive what I was going to say tonight. There's a rumor that tomorrow's the last day of school for a while, so I'm pretty excited about that. A number of us we're just trying to get through one more day. I did want to mention that this month marks 50 years of Desert Area Teachers Association, and we're pretty excited about that. We're having ourselves a little party when we come back. And I feel really proud of being part of DATA and being part of the union and seeing the tide kind of turning, that a lot more industries are recognizing the value of labor unions. So that's always nice. And I've always, I've always been very clear that I enjoy the relationship that DATA has with the district and with the board. And that was pretty much going to be it. But I just have to say that I was really surprised by the discussion a few minutes ago regarding the switch from at large to trustee. Data is under CTA, the California Teachers Association, and for years CTA has been talking to how most districts are actually do the trustee, and that the law was coming in. And certainly it's not always perfect having the trustee system. But the whole idea, of course, is that, as Mr. Ferris then pointed out towards the end, that it allows a wider range of people to run, and it can be very intimidating. And the board pretty much all looks the same, right? I mean, I look like the board, and I think that we're in, as you mentioned, Mr. Ferris, a homogeneous society, city. I just feel that that would be like a reason to really reach out and get the voices from the people, because just because you're in a smaller demographic doesn't mean that your voice shouldn't count. And I was also really surprised by the really loaded language. I was writing it down because I was, honestly, I was stunned. Begrudgingly, gun to our head, ambulance chaser, nefarious characters. And this really bothered me, and I was trying to figure out why I was so really especially angered by attorneys being called ambulance chasers. And I have my own issue with attorneys, and one is that on the one time I needed one and I called her during lunch, I had to pay, right? I ended up paying to talk to her. And I always think, kids come in to teachers all the time in our duty-free lunch, and we're like, oh my gosh, thanks for coming in. This is great. Now I can really talk to you. And I don't get to submit any kind of paperwork and say, hey, remember that little consultation we had? I know it was only 8 minutes, but I'm charging you for 15. And so I'm very aware of attorneys, but also I'm in the business of educating kids and telling them things like, hey, have you thought about going to college? Are you going to go to law school? So that really bothered me, and the loaded language also really bothered me, because every day in my classroom, I, like all my colleagues, I make sure that I talk in a fair way and don't jump immediately to stereotypes and calling people names and labeling them. So I was pretty surprised, and I can understand why this is, although it kind of sounds like a boring issue, it really isn't, right? Because our school boards are such an institution of democracy. It's such an obvious way to see democracy in action. So it surprised me. It really surprised me. It kept me wide awake, which was also pretty cool. I was writing notes on the smallest piece of paper I could find. So just checking. Okay, I have a lot of notes, but I'll be back next month. So I do want to say that I'm pretty happy that data's been around for 50 years, and I'm pretty happy that we have this rapport, and I'm looking forward to we'll have our sunshine, and we'll have a lot more debates. But anyway, I wish you all a happy, I don't know if you have a week off. I have a week off, so I wish you all a happy holiday.
Thank you.
So I don't have a week off, but just to clarify my points a little bit. First of all, if there are any students listening who want to be attorneys, please be attorneys. I love good attorneys. I love good attorneys doing good work for good people for good reasons. But I do think there are a faction, probably a small faction of attorneys out there that are what I would consider to be ambulance chasers, who do file suits because they know they can make money because it's cheaper to pay them off, basically, than to fight. And from our experience and what we've heard in these kinds of trustee area cases, that kind of approach is somewhat rampant. So it's not that these are all attorneys that have the greater good in mind, but they seem to go from district to district to district, no matter what's good or bad or indifferent for the district, and file suit anyway. And so I am always irritated when somebody files suit against Sierra Sands knowing that they'll make a buck out of money that we could be using to pay teachers, because that's cheaper than fighting what they are doing. So those are the kinds of circumstances that make me nuts over some of these attorneys. So that's why I used the language that I did. I hope that's clear. And the other piece of this is that if we truly thought that going to trustee areas was a better thing for the district, we have always had that option. We could have always done it. So we're not doing it now because we think it's the best thing for the district. We're doing it now because there are attorneys out there looking to make a buck off of districts like ours, whether it's better for us or not. If we were able to be in a position to actually make that decision for the best, in the best interest of the Indian Wells Valley and the students of this district, great. But that's not where we are, and I'm mad about it. So if that comes across, I'm not sorry, because I am mad about it. We can engage anytime we want.
Just not right now. Okay, so I will then, that brings us to reports to the Board of Trustees with the California School Employees Association.
Hello, School Board President, board members, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff, and community. During our discussion this past week at our chapter meeting, we had a very lengthy discussion on our pay scale, our high turnover rate, and the added responsibilities that have been put onto our bus drivers. Obviously, our pay scale is a huge factor in our turnover rate. The cost of living has risen astronomically. Rent, gas, groceries are all very high and getting higher. 30 years ago, the average income per year was $31,320. We have classified staff that are permanent employees who barely even make that today. 30 years ago, a loaf of bread was $1.57 and a gallon of gas was $1.16. Boy, would we love to see those prices again. Minimum wage these days doesn't even make ends meet. We have classified staff having to work side jobs and taking on working those extra hours during the school breaks instead of having the time off. We've had made some progress in the last 2 years on our pay scale, but as you know, once again, in January, the minimum wage will go up 50 more cents. So once again, will we only see the minimum wage cells move up, or could we add it to each cell and avoid the start of the collapsing of our pay scale once again, like it had happened previously with the minimum wage increases only being added to certain cells? As of June 1st, the state has added additional requirements for our bus drivers. In other districts, they have given bonuses, stipends, or even more pay to help out the bus drivers for the added requirements. As we are all aware, we are not fully staffed, especially in our transportation. Constantly trying to scramble to make sure all routes are covered. If we offered better pay, not only to our drivers, but to our classified staff, it would help to entice new employees to want to come and work for the district, but also keep the valuable employees we do have. Thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. That brings us to item 6, communications from the public, and I don't have the. The board will provide time during the discussion of each agenda item for members of the public to comment but at this time, members of the public may address the board on items that are not on the agenda. Comments should relate to items of public interest within the board's jurisdiction. The law prohibits the board from taking action on items that are not on the agenda, but if appropriate, your comments will be referred to staff for response. When addressing the board, please state your name at the podium and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. In accordance with the board bylaws, the board will limit the total time of public input to 30 minutes. Those wishing to address the board beyond that 30-minute time limit may do so at the end of the scheduled meeting agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to make public comment at this time? Randy, are you coming that direction? Okay. Then we will wait ever so patiently.
My name is Jesse Clayson, and I'm actually an employee of the district as one of the nurses. And I just wanted to say that this week I was able to take a class put on by SELPA called Classroom Culture. And the things I learned there, I'm not a teacher, but I do work with a lot of students. And I would like to say thank you for bringing this class to us. And I would recommend that everyone in the district be given the opportunity to take this class. Not only will it help with the students, but also in our dealings with each other as staff. Also regarding the comments from the California School Employees Association, I do things like ride the bus with handicapped students, well, students with disabilities. And in discussion with one of those this week, she said the decision sometimes is, do we be on time or do we provide safe transportation? And they always choose safe transportation regardless of what time you arrive at school, which is usually not on time. But I just wanted to commend the bus drivers for the effort and the work they put into it. They come early, like 5 o'clock is when one route starts, immediately go to another one, then they have several in the afternoon. I just wanted to put a shout out for the transportation, the work they do, and I hope that they also get rewarded and reimbursed for the work that they put in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else with public comment? If not, we will close public comment, communications from the public. Oh, Brody, go ahead.
I was just gonna probably end up leaving the meeting about now with
Okay,
the
that's
closing
fine.
of this section.
Okay.
Mostly because the first part of the discussion took so long that
Yeah.
it would be a
Not
little
not
later
a
now.
problem.
So
Anytime you need to go to be able to take care of your school responsibilities, you are welcome to leave. Thank you for letting us know,
Yes.
Brody.
thank you for having me
Uh-huh.
here tonight.
You bet. You have a good evening. That brings us to Educational Administration, item 1, approval of Hanover Research Member Services Agreement. Dr. Savko.
Good evening, President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff, and community. This services agreement is with Hanover Research, which is a reputable, evidence-based firm that engages with many districts across the country in terms of providing support in initiatives and research projects ranging from curriculum and instruction to culture. And before you, you have the types of projects that we might pursue over the next year that'll help inform Cabinet and the board and Dr. Moore in making some significant decisions which should represent best practices and evidence-based research. So the contract is for the term of 1 year for the cost of $50,000, and it will be funded through likely restricted funding, one of our one-time monies, so that doesn't necessarily impact the general fund. And it is recommended that the board authorize the member services agreement as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I would just like to comment that I am very excited about what we're doing in this regard. I think with what's on our plate and what we have to determine about how we can best serve our students, sometimes it can fall into the category of what we've been doing historically or what we feel emotionally about some specific program or configuration or area of representation. And I think bringing in a party that can help us analyze the data and come up with a conclusion that is in the best interest of our students and that we can vote confidently with that because of having that information, that presentation is worth every penny. When we're talking about the kinds of considerations that are on our plate right now, they are going to have long-term, far-reaching effects. And I'm excited that we're taking this approach. So thank you for bringing that to us tonight. Anybody else have any comments, questions? If not, we will call for the vote. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Brings us to policy development and review, discussion of possible approval of Administrative Regulation 3300, deletion of Administrative Regulation 3312 contracts. Ms. Smith.
Good evening. So the board previously had one administrative regulation, which was number 3312, which set the limits that we needed to take purchases to the board at $10,000. That's been the limit that we've followed since 2007. The proposal on the table right now is that we would incorporate Administrative Regulation 3300, which would basically mean that the superintendent and the assistant superintendent would be authorized to do purchases up to the public contract code bid limits, and that directors and administrators would have the ability to sign contracts up to $15,000 prior to bringing those to the board. So basically, it's to expedite and minimize the number of transactions that come to the board, knowing that the board will ultimately see every transaction that's processed monthly as part of the board package.
Second.
Action's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? I think one of the things that came up in my mind when I was looking at this is that over that period of time, what kind of inflation factor have we seen in those approvals? And
it's actually more than double what those limits were in 2007.
So I think that makes absolute sense to make that kind of adjustment. And like you say, we see those things ultimately anyway, but having to stop and bring that specifically to the board just doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public, staff? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Aye. Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Move to personal administration. Approval of incentive for early notification of retirement for the 23-24 year. Mr. Auld.
President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community. This has been a practice that we have adopted for a number of years now. The recruiting window opens in early February, continues through March, and it is always highly effective to know, or at least hope to know, who we're looking for. And so the incentive is not that our staff retire. We would like to keep our staff because it is more and more challenging to recruit and retain staff. It is actually just an incentive to make the notification. Whether or not an employee retires is a personal decision, and this is not in any way meant to try to encourage that to happen. So currently the amount is for our certificated staff to provide notification prior to February 5th. They receive a $3,000 stipend, and for classified employees, it's $1,600 stipend. Last year, the district paid 3 classified notification incentives and 4 certificated notification incentives for a total cost of $16,800. It will vary, but we anticipate it will be close to that same amount for this year. It is recommended that the board approve the incentive for early notification of retirement program for 2023-24 in the amount of $3,000 for each certificated employee and $1,600 for each classified employee who declares his or her intent to retire in writing within the applicable retirement window no later than February 5th, 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, first I apologize because you very likely don't know the answer to this because you probably would have had to research it and I didn't give you the opportunity to do so, so I apologize for that. But it seemed, these numbers seem pretty small to me, the number of notifications that we got last year compared to, compared to history. Do you have any idea how many retirements we had that were, where you were notified after this period last year?
I am aware of one or two circumstances. However, those circumstances were deeply personal. There was a development that took place after the window had closed that that they made a personal decision. They hadn't intended to retire, but they decided to retire because of a personal situation.
Okay, so it's just small numbers in general.
Right.
Sounds like. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public, staff, and community? Call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Ms. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye, it is unanimous. Brings us to 8.2, authorization for revisions to the classified management position, Director of Finance and Budget.
So in May of 2020, the Board of Trustees approved a new management level administrative position, Chief Financial Officer. The employee serving as the Director of Finance and Budget at that time was promoted to the new position, and the Director position was not filled and is vacant to this day. Pending retirement of our CFO, the district intends to fill the Director of Finance and Budget position. However, as the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services reviewed the current job description, it was determined that several modifications were necessary. As far as financial implications, actually the Director of Finance and Budget will remain at a Class 9 position on the management salary schedule. The CFO position is a Class 4 position on the management salary schedule, so the district actually will see a savings of approximately $45,000 annually as a result of this change in staffing. I would say that the CFO position will remain on the books. We don't have an intention currently to fill that, but we could if that becomes necessary. It's recommended that the board approve the revisions to the Director of Finance and Budget position as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Any questions or comments from members of the public, staff? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Aye. Ms. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. It's unanimous. Brings us to item 3. 8.3 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Which is a waiver for request enabling the district to assign individuals in certificated positions without appropriate credentials. Any questions or comments from board members? Any questions or comments from members of the public? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Aye. Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Auld. And brings us to general administration, designation of date and time of the organizational meeting of the board. Dr. Moore.
There we go. So 9.1, this is our annual action that officially sets our December regular meeting as the organizational meeting. And as you know, there are some parameters of when that meeting is held. So our recommendation is that the board designate our already scheduled December 14th, 7 p.m. meeting as the date and time for our organizational meeting. And if so designated, we will then follow up with reporting this to the County Office of Education and the state as required.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Have any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public or staff? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Aye. Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It makes it unanimous. Goes to item 2, nominations for representatives to the California School Boards Association.
Thank you. This is an opportunity to nominate representatives if desired. There are 3 who are terming out for their delegate assembly, and they're listed in the item. You can see from Rosedale Union, Standard School District and Kern High School District. There are 3 representatives terming out, and if the board is interested, they can discuss and nominate anyone from those areas.
Does anyone have anyone that they wish to nominate that they have hopefully discussed with before tonight? Hearing none, we will move on to item 3, selection of up to 2 board members to attend the CSBA and AXA Coast to Coast Federal Advocacy event in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. This item came before the board previously, and the budget was determined. We determined we would send up to 2 board members and myself to the conference. And at this point, we wanted to have the public conversation and discussion to identify which 2 board members, or 1, would be joining us so we can finalize the travel arrangements in a timely fashion.
Okay, so we have had this discussion briefly before, and I think in the previous discussion, we talked about the possibility of up to 2 board members. And if we did so, we kind of discussed that we like the idea of a veteran board member and a new board member. I will say I was able to attend last year. It was a very good program. I highly recommend that we do send members. I recommend that we send 2. Since I've had the opportunity already once before, if we follow this pattern of a veteran and a new board member, I guess I would ask if, Kurt, do you have interest, or Mike, do you have interest or availability to go this year?
I would have both,
Okay.
and I know we discussed specific rationale where you would go last time, and I'm happy to not rule you out just because you went last time. But I guess what I would say is that I'm happy to go if you others aren't interested.
Mike, do you have interest or availability?
I have availability, but I would defer and let you guys go.
Okay, and I think in that regard, Kurt, I believe it would be good for us to have the representation, and I think it would be a good opportunity for you. That's my position.
Okay. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that, sure.
How do you guys feel about that concept?
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine with me.
So do either of you have interest and or availability to attend this year?
I think Mary and I talked about it, and she said she'd rather go next year, and I can go this year, so.
Okay, all
It's
right.
fine. Either way is fine with me. I can
All
go
right.
if you'd like.
So shall we, just for the formality, shall we make nominations? I will nominate Robert and Kurt to attend this upcoming Coast to Coast. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. We have any other nominations?
The only other thing I would say is that, just want to be clear, this is not it's got to be the 2 of us, and if one has to go, we only send 1, or 2 can't go, whatever. These are the names that we're signing up, but we can change it if.
True, yeah,
things happen.
if somebody's personal circumstances change and we wish to, we've already agreed to send 2, this would be the 2 we designate. If something happens between now and then, we can certainly alter that.
Okay.
Okay, then I will call for a vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Ms. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Brings us to item 4, board discussion regarding the content of draft trustee area maps. Oh, we already did that, I'm sorry. We will move on to item 10, construction administration, report to the board, construction activities and issues. Mr. Coit.
President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community, I'm pleased to give this update on the status of the district's construction activities. This report is for informational purposes only and no action is required. So I thought I'd give a brief overview of some of our projects, including Richmond School, Fowler Playground, electric bus yard, the HVAC replacement, and Murray Middle School expansion. I'm going to jump first to Murray Middle School expansion because I don't have a slide for that, but at the last board meeting, we presented a proposal from Arcadis for that design, and we've got a signed contract and we're getting ready to kick that project off. So now we'll move to Richmond School, our DOD project. And I think you're familiar with this map, so I'm going to focus on a little bit on Building B and Building A. Today I've got some slides to show you of progress on that. So here's Building B from the outside and looking towards the corridor. And we've jumped down now to the northwest corner of a couple of the kindergartens classrooms, and you can see that millwork's going in, their cabinets, T-bar ceilings in. That one shows some storage areas that are framed out. So all of the wall surfaces are just about complete, and lights are dropped. So things are moving along on the interior of the building. There's some of the cubbies for the kindergarten classroom. And there's one of the restrooms inside the kindergarten classroom.
That toilet's really short.
Yeah, it won't be much taller than that when we're done. That's the little guys. And now we're looking at Building A. So this was Tuesday early afternoon or late morning. And we're standing up the gym or the adaptive PE room. That was later in the day. This was yesterday. So all of the exterior portion of the building's up, and the last section of the roof is, oh, I'm going the wrong way. Let's catch back, there we were, okay. So now the roof is set. And now just looking back a little bit, you can see the gym, and in the distance you can see Building B, and it kind of gives you a view of the relationship to the courtyard. And if you get a chance to stop by, basically any place there's concrete right now, there's either slabs or stem walls in place. Buildings are going there. We haven't started to do any of the site concrete work for sidewalks and things, so I'd encourage you to get a chance to stop by, and you can see some of the other footings starting to go in, and it's starting to take shape, and you get a feel for what the campus is going to look like. The Fowler Preschool Playground, I'm happy to show you a couple pictures here. It's being used. It's been approved by DSA and certified by the preschool folks, so the students are using the playground. And I went over there the other morning, this soccer ball posed for the shot that we were taking. Just happy to see that project. Very close, just a couple little punch items left on that project, and we'll wrap it up. This is the bus yard, and we had done it was much shinier than that. We did a flood test on it. We have some issues with ponding and I guess the surface. There's some aggregate showing through on the asphalt, so we're working with the contractor right now to resolve that. Electrically, it's operational. We got some lighting controls to finish up, so we will be ready for that when we get the electric bus fleet ready to roll.
I actually had somebody today ask me rather irritated, they were irritated that these charging stations were behind a fence. You know, they wanted it to be like out at Classic Burgers or wherever, so they could all get to them. I explained to them that it was for buses, and then they seemed to be okay.
Well, I think it's probably a good thing that we got behind on the schedule on this and the buses, because I don't know how we'd access this right now with all the work going on Ward and the surrounding area.
It would have been very frustrating with
yes. So that's nearing completion. I hope to get all the final sign-off and inspections here over the next couple months. And you might recall a few months back, I think about 6 months ago now, we bought 30 BARD units to replace the Marvairs that were not performing well. We have received those and put them into storage, and over the winter break, we plan to swap all those out with these BARD units. I just wanted to show you they're here, and hopefully in January, I can tell you they're all operational. And any questions?
Any questions by board members? Any questions, members of the public or staff? Thank you so much.
Okay,
Randy.
thank you.
That brings us to Business Administration, approval of an agreement with the Government Financial Services Joint Powers Authority to provide financial consulting services in support of the proposed 2024 bond measure. Ms. Smith.
Good evening. So I'm going to bundle 11.1, 11.2, and 11.3 for purposes of this conversation, because you'll notice that the backgrounds are pretty much comparable. The district is considering putting a bond measure on the ballot in 2024 to help try to generate revenue to meet a 20% match for an additional DoD grant that we will be applying for to modernize Pierce and replace V-Way. And we have used these three consultants: Government Financial Service Joint Power Authority, who used to be Government Financial Strategies, provide financial services associated with financing the bonds and sequencing when we would sell those. EMC Research does the pre-bond survey, and then the information that we get from that survey helps us. In 2020, it actually made us decide not to put a measure on the ballot, and in 2022, it helped us frame the message, which we would use them again if we do a 2024 bond measure. And then we also use Parker and Covert as our bond counsel. The Parker and Covert services are not charged unless we do pass a bond and end up selling those bonds. And the same with the Government Financial Strategies. Those fees would not be incurred if the bond measure doesn't pass and we don't end up selling any bonds. The EMC research gets done sooner so that we have that information to help us make the decision about going forward with the bond measure, or how to frame the messages that we use for that. And so the request is that you would approve the agreement with Parker Covert, the agreement with Government Financial Services Joint Powers Agreement, and the agreement with EMC Research in support of that proposed bond measure.
Move 11.1 through 11.3.
Second?
Second.
Okay, 11.1 through 3 has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members on those issues?
I'm just glad that we don't have to pay if we don't decide to do it. That's kind of a nice thing, so, because that's a lot of money.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? Staff? Not, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It makes it unanimous. Thank you so much for bundling those in that way. Brings us to item 4, approval of an agreement with Lou Edwards Group to provide community engagement and consulting services. Ms. Smith.
And so, as you know, we will be implementing several complex academic and facility strategies over the next several years. And one of the key components of those is a strong community engagement process and strong public communication. And so the district feels that it would be in our best interest to contract with Lou Edwards Groups to provide some consulting support. They have a lot of experience with public agencies and have worked closely with the 3 firms that we just previously approved in support of the bond measure. And so they were highly recommended. And so the request is that the board approve an agreement with the Lou Edwards Groups to provide community engagement and consulting services.
Move to recommend action.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, I want to thank whoever added this to the mix, because it really is the kind of the missing link. You know, we had a great crowd of community members, you know, local business people, you know, a lot of people last time who were behind the bond, and it still went down in flames. And, you know, I think that, you know, having better community engagement in order to get the, you know, kind of the real word out as opposed to rumors and innuendos is, you know, going to be huge. So, thank you for this.
And I would support that as well, and kind of echo the same comments I made before. Is that, you know, over the years we strive to develop a good, strong community involvement and engagement, and it's tough, and we have difficulty landing on what really works and what's meaningful, and are we really engaging the number of people and the breadth that we ought to? And so I think, looking to a professional that can give us some insight in that way is really smart. And I believe this is another situation of money well spent to develop that kind of relationship that can pay off for us. So
Yeah, I think the cost is very low, very small compared to, the benefit we're likely to gain from it. So I think that's great.
any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public or staff? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Ms. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye, it is unanimous. Okay, have nothing under technology administration. Brings us to, we will temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to convene the meeting of the Interkern Schools Financing Authority Board of Directors meeting, and I think the only item on the agenda is the minutes. So if they are approved, with no correction, they will stand as approved, and we will adjourn that meeting and re-enter the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education and move to the consent calendar.
Move entire consent calendar.
I have a motion and a second for the entire consent calendar. Any questions or comments on any of those items? Any questions or comments on any of those items from the public or staff?
I think the only thing, it's exciting to see that the borough's cheer team gets to go to the Pearl Harbor Memorial Parade. I'm jealous, although you don't want to see me in a skirt probably.
But did you offer to chaperone?
No, I didn't do that either. They don't want me.
So, then I will call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell? Aye. Ms. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous. Moves us to future agenda items. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? If not, we will move to adjournment. We thank you very much for coming this evening. Hope everyone has a nice holiday with friends and family. And our next meeting will be
December 14th.
actually the 14th.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes.